Hello, Angel. Today we're talking about the concept of the zone of genius. And this is a absolutely critical concept for ambitious women to know and understand and embody. And that's because it's the key to unlocking your full brilliance, your full creativity, and all your magical gifts into the world. And spoiler alert, your zone of genius is not just what you're good at, it's also what energizes you and delights you and is what you're meant to be doing. So let's do a deep dive. And before we jump in, if you are new here, my name is Anna Lacomi. I'm known as the Career Guardian Angel. And my mission is to build an army of ambitious women all over the world who are each changing the world in their own unique way. And in this video, I will be using myself as an example to illustrate the zone of genius and, by the way, the other zones of non-genius so that you can get a really good picture of what this is so you can start to think about what this means for you. So first of all, where is this concept from? It was coined by Gay Hendricks, the author of The Big Leap. This book has changed my life, and it's a book that I read every year because it is so profound. And it's a book I recommend to my clients. And with the title, The Big Leap, it's referencing the big leap and the courage that's required to be in your zone of genius. It takes a lot of courage, but that is where a lot of ambitious people, especially brilliant, creative, kind-hearted women, want to be because that is where we have the biggest impact and find the biggest fulfillment and yumminess when it comes to our career as well as our life. All right, so let's get down to it. Before we talk about the zone of genius, I'm going to go ahead and explain to you the other zones because probably you're operating mostly in the zones that are not your zone of genius right now, and that's okay. That was me too. And I'll explain as I share what each of these zones are. So number one, the bottom of the barrel, we have the zone of incompetence. This is the things that you're just not good at, okay? And so it's important to acknowledge what we suck at so we can just let it go and either not do that, delegate it, or hire someone to do the things that we need to do that we just don't have that natural talent for. In fact, we probably dread the things that are in our zone of incompetence. It feels bad to be doing things that don't feel like we're good at them. I'll never forget what I learned about children and homework. It's not that children don't want to do their homework, it's because they don't know how to do their homework that stops them from doing it. And so there's a similar thing happening with the zone of incompetence. We dread those tasks or those things because we're just not good at them. So the way to identify your zone of incompetence is that feeling of, ew, I don't want to do this, most likely. And ew, I don't want to do this is not the same as pushing your comfort zone and challenging yourself. That's a very different feeling that you can feel in your body, whether you are choosing not to do something because you're scared or choosing not to do something because you just know it feels awful. It's not aligned for you and it's not the best use of your time. And so your zone of incompetence will include things you might have received negative feedback on. And this is not to blame or shame. This is just for awareness so that we can accept that and move on to the zone of genius. And this is probably things that you see other people doing better than you. So an example of something on my zone of incompetence is cleaning. I'm just absolutely horrible. I'm good at organizing. I can organize things and, decide what stays or what goes. But the physical act of cleaning, wiping, it doesn't matter how long I do it, it still doesn't look like how it should look. And I just feel like other people can clean so much better in much shorter time. And so that is why I do outsource cleaning my house. And that has released me from that burden and also freed up my time to be more in my zone of genius. Next, we have the zone of competence. So these are things that we are okay at, probably average, probably on par with an average person. And so these are things that we probably don't mind doing, but they don't give us any kind of deep satisfaction. They are sort of more mechanical for us. So even though you might do something well, you don't get that sense of gratification. You don't get a sense of excitement or enthusiasm or passion for doing that thing. For me, in my zone of competence is cooking. I can absolutely whip up a meal. I can meal prep, but it's not something that I am excited to do. It's more of a have to do, and I just happen to be competent at it. And so that is my zone of competence. And by the way, these zones of incompetence and competence, I have mentioned two things that are unrelated to my career, but that doesn't mean that you might not have things in your current career, especially if you have a corporate job where you have a job description and expectations for a specific role. You might find that you're struggling because some of the requirements or skills necessary fall in your zone of incompetence or zone of competence. And if they're in your zone of incompetence, I might suggest that that kind of role is not right for you, and you would just be so much better off not trying to keep improving in that area, but just go to the area where you're already good at and make yourself even better. And so that brings us to the zone of excellence. The zone of excellence is what we are good at, and we're probably better than most people. This is where you probably get a lot of positive feedback. And if you have a successful career, this is probably where you spend most of your time. This zone of excellence, these things, these skills that you're naturally good at, that you have honed over time, you get positive feedback, recognition, respect for. However, ultimately, your zone of excellence, even though you're really good at it, feels you leaves you feeling drained, leaves you feeling like you're still efforting. It still feels like work. And yes, there's will always be parts of our jobs or our businesses that are going to feel like work. But the point is, we want to identify the zone of excellence so that we can distinguish that and tease it apart from the zone of genius. This is where the biggest distinguishing factor comes into for ambitious women, really getting clear on the zone of excellence versus zone of genius. And so, to reiterate, the zone of excellence is probably where you are now. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're feeling like a little bit bored, restless, thinking, is this all there is? And you kind of want to vomit at the thought of doing that work that you're really good at for the rest of your life. That was me. I was incredibly good in my market research job. I was really good as an executive leader. I was good at managing clients. I was good at managing staff. But ultimately, that was my zone of excellence. And I could have done that in my sleep. I had some satisfaction from that. However, it ultimately left me feeling it's kind of like eating a meal and still feeling hungry. Okay. Or it's sort of like going on a vacation, but still feeling tired. Like I was still like, I don't, I dreamed that there was a world in which I was more lit up, more energized, more excited to be doing my work, and that I dreamed that I had gifts that had an even bigger impact on the world. And that is another distinguishing factor between excellence and genius. All right, drum roll, please. Let's talk about the zone of genius. Your zone of genius is the work that you love doing. There's a passion behind it. If you've read the book about flow, about losing track of time and doing things that just feel so good to us, that we're so good at, we just fly through it and we lose track of time, that flow state is highly related to this zone of genius. And not only that, but you get energized from doing the work in your zone of genius instead of depleted. That is the main distinction. The zone of excellence, draining, even though you're good. Zone of genius, you're excellent at, and it gives you more energy as opposed to drains you. And not only that, but your zone of genius also has the potential for bigger impact. So, yes, it feels amazing for you, but it also creates something that has an even bigger impact than your zone of excellence ever could. And that's why it's important to be in your zone of genius, because your time spent there has a higher ROI, not just for you and your well-being, your mental health, your excitement, your joy, but also the ROI for the world and the impact that you can have and the meaningful work that you can create. And so, in my example, my corporate job was in my zone of excellence. However, what I'm doing here as your career guardian angel, this is my zone of genius. My zone of genius is in sharing my wisdom, guiding people, coaching people, extracting your gifts, extracting your zone of genius, seeing you deeply. I work really well on an individual level and in small groups. That's actually how my human design projector aura works. It penetrates you, sees you deeply so that you can have this mirror reflection back of who you are, what your true essence is, so that you can go out into the world and shine with your magic. And I would say this has been the biggest shift in working my corporate job versus doing this work in my zone of genius. Even though it's less stable and predictable, and I don't have that expected every other week paycheck like I used to, I feel a lot more grounded and I feel a lot more energized. And I have so much energy. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to burst out of my seat and I actually sit on a Pilates ball because I just have so much energy. It truly feels like not being able to just sit still and just wanting to pop out. That being said, this is not an ADHD symptom. I actually also have extreme laser focus. Extreme laser focus that allows me to create incredible programs for my client, incredible content, and also be laser focused in my sessions, whether it's one-on-one or in my group programs. And I have to say, it was working towards my zone of genius while I was still in my corporate job, still in my zone of excellence, taking those baby steps to discover what my zone of genius is and spending increasingly more time in my zone of genius that has allowed me to build my successful business, which is now I've been doing this full time for 3 years. If you want to hear the story about how I got laid off 3 years ago and how it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and that's because I had done the work to embody my zone of genius, check out my other video. And if you're feeling really inspired and lit up to uncover your zone of genius, I would love to guide you. And there are currently 2 ways to work with me. Number one, you can go ahead and book a one-on-one private 90-minute session during which I will pull all your charts, your human design, your astrology, your numerology, and show you your own blueprint for success, show you your greatest gifts, show you how you're meant to impact the world and how you're meant to attract all these opportunities to bring your vision to life so you can be more and more in your zone of genius. I also have a brand new group program for ambitious women to do this work together. It's called You Didn't Come This Far to Be Meh. And it's a 3-month process during which I walk you through all the most powerful tools, techniques, and systems that I used to be able to be in my zone of genius so that you can do the same, so that you can go all in on you, and so that you can own your genius and create this life that lights you up. Because if you're here, you did not come this far to be meh. And if you're here, that means you were not meant for mediocrity. You were not meant to settle, and you were not meant to settle on your zone of excellence. So if you're ready to move on to your zone of genius, I would love to guide you. If you have any questions, leave those in the comments, and I'll see you next time.